8. Buick Roadmaster hearse. It's unclear how exactly a heavily modified 1947 Buick Roadmaster Super 8 hearse ended up rusting away in a field in Greece. Built in Flint, Michigan during the heyday of America's industrial era, the vintage yet futuristic-looking 18-window vehicle had a Mercedes-Benz engine and tail and bumper lights from a 1956 Chevy. Photos of the unusual car have circulated online for years, but its history is obscure. It was for sale when images of it surrounded by overgrowth and seemingly forgotten first began to circulate. A car enthusiast from southern Italy named Dante Fontana bought the hearse with plans to restore it, and he runs a Facebook group where he provides regular updates on its progress. 7. Bugatti Royale. From 1927 to 1933, Bugatti manufactured a luxury car called the Type 41 Royale Kellner. The company's founder, Ettore Arco Isidoro Bugatti, designed it specifically for royalty and the ultra-wealthy. At around 7,000 pounds and nearly 21 feet, the Gothic-looking Royale was much longer and heavier than many modern cars. It handled well despite its size and was the largest and most luxurious car in the world at the time. Bugatti originally planned to have 25 Royales made, but only 7 ever rolled off the production line, and he was only able to sell 3 of them. At the jaw-dropping price of $43,000, nearly $990,000 in today's currency, the Royale was so expensive that not even royals wanted to buy one. With the Great Depression in full swing, even the richest of the rich were watching their spending. Bugatti also failed to sell the car because of his notoriously difficult personality. He was known for being stubborn and conceited, and this didn't do him any favors when it came to selling his vehicles. Due to its price, the Royale wasn't destined to sell in high numbers to begin with. It also came with a 4-year waiting period for delivery of the final product. But Bugatti managed to shrink his target audience of consumers even more by being, well, himself. For example, he canceled King Zog of Albania's order for one of his cars because he didn't like how the leader ate. The Royale prototype was totaled in an accident. 5 of the 6 remaining Royales are in museums throughout the world, including the one Bugatti used as his personal vehicle. 6. Oldsmobile F88. No one knows for sure how many Oldsmobile F88s were made, but the number was no more than 4. It sat on a Chevy Corvette chassis, but the F88 was its own unique vehicle. The 2-seat metallic gold concept car debuted at the General Motors Motorama exhibition at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City in 1954. It received an overwhelmingly popular reaction from the 2 million people who saw it, indicating that it would sell really well on the market. But the F88 never reached the production stage, most likely because it would have hurt sales of the Chevy Corvette. At the time, Chevy and Oldsmobile were both divisions of GM. Since Chevy was GM's most profitable division, it's likely that the company ruled in its favor when it came to any attempts to stop the F88 from being brought to market. While most dream cars were scrapped after the Motorama show, its designer, the famed Harley Earl, couldn't bear to see it happen to his prized creation, so he saved it and shipped it to someone whose identity remains a mystery to this day. The F88 was passed from one owner to the next over the following years, dismantled and largely unappreciated for its value. Its exact movements leave room for questions, but blueprints and other documents show that it underwent a restoration while it was under the ownership of a man named Lon Kruger. In 2005, Discovery Communications owner John Hendricks bought the F88 for $3.24 million, the most anyone has ever paid for a collector car at a Barrett-Jackson auction. It's on display at the Gateway Automobile Museum in Colorado. As far as the other 1, 2, or 3 F88s that may or may not have existed go, many experts agree that there were at least 3 F88s, including the original. But only the original still exists, while the fate of the others remains a mystery. 5. Peele P50. At just 54 inches, 41 inches, and 47 inches, the 3-wheeled Peele P50 is the smallest production car ever made. It was manufactured in Britain from 1962 to 1965 and was advertised as a city car with enough room for one person and a shopping bag. With a top speed of 28 miles per hour, it was ideal for running errands locally, but it was impractical for most other uses, including driving on a highway. The P50 had no reverse gear, but it was equipped with a handle allowing the driver to maneuver it backward physically. And at just 130 pounds, it was easy enough for a person to move without any help. 50 of the original model were made, and 27 still exist today. In 1965 and 1966, Peele manufactured a version of the P50 with enough room for a passenger, called the Trident. It was barely bigger than the original version and was marked for occasional use as a two-seater. Peele began manufacturing a modern version of the P50 in 2011. The newer P50s look similar to the originals on the outside, but have a fully functioning reverse gear and other features to ensure that they're road legal. Like its predecessor, it only goes up to 28 miles per hour. In 2021, a man named Alex Orchin completed the longest ever trip in a 2017 Peele P50. He began the 900-mile journey in Scotland and arrived in Land's End, Cornwall, England 3 weeks later. Because the car was far too small to sleep in, Orchin's friend tagged along in a camper van. Would you attempt a cross-country journey in a P50? Let us know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. 4. Amphicar. Launched in 1961 at the New York Auto Show, the Amphicar Model 770 was an amphibious car that drove on land and also functioned as a boat. It was manufactured in West Germany from 1961 to 1965 and was marketed until 1968. On the road, the Amphicar had a top speed of 70 miles per hour. It went no more than 7 miles per hour in the water. In accordance with Coast Guard requirements, it was equipped with navigation lights and a flag. The rear-wheel drive car was powered by a 4-speed manual transmission, which powered 2 reversible propellers while operating as a boat. For use in the water, the main gear lever would be left in neutral, while a secondary gear was used for engaging the propellers. While approaching a boat ramp, the driver would switch the car into first gear and drive it right out of the water. After being used as a boat, the Amphicar required greasing in 13 places, one of which required the removal of the back seat in order to access it. During its 5-year production run, a total of 3,878 Amphicars were made. It's still a hit today among vintage amphibious car enthusiasts who gather at various locations for swim-ins. Rides in the water are even offered as an attraction at the Disney Springs Entertainment Complex at Walt Disney World in Florida, which owns a fleet of 8 Amphicars. But at a price tag of $125, the experience isn't exactly cheap. 3. ISO BMW Isetta. Known as the world's first microcar, the Italian-designed ISO Isetta was just 7.5 feet, and 4.5 feet, it had a single door on the front of the vehicle and was nicknamed a bubble car for its egg-shaped body and windows. The Isetta took over 30 seconds for the Isetta to reach a speed of 31 miles per hour, and it had a top speed of just 47 miles per hour. Its fuel tank only held 3.4 gallons gas, and it had a fuel efficiency of around 42 miles per gallon. After experiencing initial success, the Isetta fell in popularity in Italy due to competition from Fiat, and because it was too close in price to regular cars, which offered much more room. ISO built around 1,000 units in the country before production ceased in 1955, and the same company manufactured the car in Spain until 1958. Between 1955 and 1962, BMW built 3 variants of the Isetta under license from ISO. The Isetta 250 and 300 both featured 2 seats, while the 600 had 4 seats. BMW offered the car in 45 different colors and was by far its biggest manufacturer. Variants were also produced in France, Argentina, Britain, and Brazil by various companies throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s. And while the Isetta was hugely popular for a short time, the excitement seemed to wear off relatively quickly in favor of full-size cars. 2. Daxian. Designed by American inventor Buckminster Fuller during the early years of the Great Depression, the Daxian car made its debut at Chicago's 1933-1934 World's Fair. The odd-looking Zeppelin-shaped vehicle had 2 wheels in the front and 1 in the back, and was intended as the basis for a vehicle that would one day be able to drive, fly, and navigate underwater. Its 8-cylinder engine was located in the rear, and it could accommodate up to 11 passengers. But the Daxian's design wasn't practical as an everyday car. It handled poorly in high winds and at high speeds, and was difficult to steer in general. The vehicle had a tendency to turn in the wind. Only specially trained drivers were allowed to get behind the wheel, and nobody was allowed to drive in windy or inclement weather of any kind. The Daxian received a lot of publicity, drawing the attention of auto manufacturers who were interested in Fuller's work. He was even offered a high-paying contract working for wealthy socialite and stockbroker Philip Pearson. But Fuller was already well-funded by the sizable inheritance he was living off of, and he never meant for the Daxian to be a commercial venture. In other words, he never necessarily intended to take it past the prototype stage. Only 3 were ever built. During the World's Fair in 1933, a politician accidentally crashed his car into the first Daxian prototype, causing it to fall over and killing the drivers while leaving the passengers injured. The politician moved his car away from the scene, and the Daxian was blamed for the deadly crash. After the accident, the prototype was repaired, only to be destroyed after catching fire in a refueling mishap. After finishing them and realizing how far off they were from being roadworthy, Fuller refocused his efforts on other projects. Prototype number 3 was scrapped during the 1950s. The second prototype was thought to be lost until 1968, when some engineering students discovered it on a farm, where it was being used as a chicken coop. They learned that the farmer who owned the property had paid $1 for it, and they ended up paying him $3,000 for the vehicle. Casino magnate Bill Harrah eventually acquired the last surviving Daxian as an addition to his exotic car collection, which eventually became the National Automobile Museum in Reno, Nevada. The Daxian has been restored and remains on display at the museum today. 1. 1911 Reeves Overland Octo Auto. Milton Reeves was an early pioneer of the American automotive industry who held more than 100 patents for his inventions, some of which were more popular than others. He's most remembered for his 20-foot-long, 8-wheeled Reeves Overland Octo Auto. Built in 1911, the truly bizarre-looking vehicle was a highly modified version of a 1910 Overland Roadster. At the time, roads were much rougher than they are today, and car technology was in its infancy, which meant that riders felt every bump and pothole in the road. Going for a drive was downright uncomfortable and could even be painful in some cases. By adding extra wheels to a Roadster, Reeves hoped to smooth out the ride by distributing the car's weight, and it worked incredibly well. But at a building cost of $3,200 each, or around $90,000 today, it was too expensive to realistically be put into production. In 1912, Reeves removed 2 wheels from the front of the Octo Auto and rebranded it as the Sexto Auto. But it was still incredibly expensive, and only a few were ever sold. It was the last car Reeves built prior to his death in 1925 at the age of 60. The Octo Auto and Sexto Auto were failures from a financial standpoint, but they were remarkable in their own right for the smooth ride they created in environments where a comfortable drive was unheard of. None are known to exist today, and the cars live on only in photographs.
9. Buried Plymouth. In October 2021, a long-lost Plymouth automobile was found after almost 50 years of being buried underground. The whole time, it was in an Oklahoma backyard. The car, which was owned by a man named Tommy Thompson, is believed to have been buried in the 1970s after being stolen and stripped down for parts. The discovery was made when the current property owner decided to do some landscaping and found a section of ground that seemed sunken in. After digging around, he uncovered the top of the Plymouth's roof poking out of the soil. He then contacted Thompson's family, who confirmed the car was indeed the one that had been stolen from their father's auto repair shop years ago. The vehicle was eventually excavated from the ground and cleaned, revealing a surprisingly well-preserved car. While the exterior was rusty and the interior was filled with dirt, the car's engine was still intact and seemed to be in working order. The discovery of the Plymouth has sparked interest from car enthusiasts and historians, who see the car as a time capsule of sorts, offering a glimpse into the automotive culture of the 1970s. The car has also become a symbol of resilience, with many impressed that it survived decades underground, only to be rediscovered and restored back to its former glory. 8. Death Tunnel. The Winterberg Tunnel was a German underground shelter located on the Chemin-des Dames battlefront during World War I. It was built back in 1916 to protect soldiers from attacks. The tunnel was about 300 meters long and had 2 entrances, one on each side of a hill. On 4th May 1917, the French launched a massive offensive against German positions. They bombarded the Winterberg Tunnel with heavy shells, causing both entrances to collapse, trapping over 270 German soldiers inside. The soldiers suffocated as they ran out of oxygen and were poisoned by carbon monoxide. The tunnel remained hidden for more than a century until it was rediscovered by Elaine and Pierre Malinowski, a father and son team of amateur historians. They spent about 15 years searching for the tunnel, using old maps, aerial photos, and metal detectors. They finally found it in March 2021 and exposed its entrance with a bulldozer. The Winterberg Tunnel discovery is one of the most important archaeological finds from World War I in France. It reveals a tragic story of war and death that's been forgotten for decades. The Malinowskis hope to honor the memory of fallen soldiers by finding their relatives and giving them a proper burial. 7. Massive galaxies. The James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, launched back in December 2022 and has made a stunning discovery that challenges our current understanding of galaxy formation. It has located 6 massive galaxies that existed when the universe was less than 1 billion years old. These galaxies are roughly the size of our own Milky Way galaxy, which contains hundreds of billions of stars itself. The newly discovered galaxies formed much faster than expected, within 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang that we once thought created the universe. According to theorists, galaxies grow gradually over time by merging with smaller ones. But these ancient star systems seem to have reached their enormous sizes very quickly. How did they do it? One possible explanation is that they were fueled by a large amount of gas in their surroundings, which allowed them to form stars at a faster rate. Another possibility is that they were influenced by dark matter, a mysterious substance that makes up most of the universe but does not emit light. The JWST team hopes to find more clues by observing these star systems in more detail and looking for more examples of them. The JWST is specifically designed to observe infrared light, which can penetrate dust and gases that block visible light. This makes it ideal for studying extremely distant objects like these galaxies, whose light has been stretched by the vast expansion of space. The discovery of these massive star systems opens up new questions about how our universe evolved and what else might be out there. It really shows us how small we are and how much we still don't know. 6. Woolly rhino remains. Woolly rhinos were large mammals that lived during the Pleistocene epoch, or more popularly, the Ice Age. They had thick fur, 2 horns on their nose, and a big hump on their back. They adapted to cold climates and grazed in grassy areas. In recent years, remains of woolly rhinos have been found in different parts of England. These discoveries shed light on the diversity of these extinct animals. One of the creatures was found by lead miners in 1822 in the Dream Cave in Wirksworth, Derbyshire. They found an almost complete skeleton of a woolly rhino that would have been about 11.5 feet long and lived 43,000 years ago. The skeleton was studied and preserved at Oxford University for nearly 2 centuries before returning to the site in 2021. Another discovery was made by highway workers in 2018 near Cambridge. They found the bones of both a woolly mammoth and a woolly rhino that were about 130,000 years old. A third discovery was made in 2022 during the construction of a new town called Sherford. They found bones of several Ice Age mammals, including a woolly mammoth, a woolly rhino, a hyena, a wolf, a horse, an elk, and more. These remains revealed that Sherford was once a rich habitat for a variety of species during the last glacial period. These discoveries show us how diverse and widespread woolly rhinos were in England during the Ice Age. They also help us understand how these creatures lived, died, and interacted with other species and ancient humans. 5. Evidence of brain surgery. Archaeologists have discovered a case of ancient brain surgery in Megiddo, Israel. The patient was a man who lived around 3000 BC. He suffered from a severe infection that caused his skull to swell up. The researchers believe the man underwent a procedure called trephination, which involves drilling a hole into the skull to relieve pressure or remove diseased tissue. This is the earliest example of this type of procedure in the ancient Near East, and one of the oldest in mankind's history. The surgery was performed with a sharp flint tool that left a small circular opening on the left side of his forehead. The bone around the hole showed signs of healing, indicating that he survived the operation and lived afterwards. The researchers think the procedure may have been done by a skilled healer who had knowledge of anatomy and infection control. They also suggest that the man may have been an important member of his community who received special care. The discovery sheds new light on the medical practices of ancient people living in Megiddo, a strategic site that saw many battles and cultural exchanges over thousands of years. Aren't you glad we have better medical technology nowadays? Tell us what you thought of that last discovery down in the comments. If you liked the video so far, be sure to subscribe to the channel. 4. New species of ancient human. In September 2019, scientists discovered a new species of ancient humans called Homo luzonensis in the Philippines. The find is significant since it provides new insights into the evolution of mankind and suggests that our species was not the only type of human to inhabit Southeast Asia years ago. The discovery of Homo luzonensis was made possible by the excavation of an island cave on Luzon, where the fossils of at least 2 adults and 1 juvenile were uncovered. The fossils date back 50,000 to 67,000 years ago and show a mix of primitive and advanced features, including small teeth, curved fingers and toes, and leg bones that suggest the species was well suited for climbing. Since the discovery, debates have sparked over the origins of humans and the routes that ancient people took as they migrated across the globe. Some scientists believe the new species is a descendant of Homo erectus, an early hominid that lived in Asia. Others suggest it may be related to the mysterious Denisovans, a group of ancient humans that lived in Siberia and interbred with humans in Asia and Oceania. Overall, the discovery of Homo luzonensis highlights the complexity of human evolution and the importance of continued research. It also underscores the need for the preservation and the responsible excavation and analysis of fossils, which can provide important clues to our past and help us to understand our current place in the world. 3. Venomous snake. In 2021, a new species of venomous snake was spotted in India. The snake was found in the forested mountains of Arunachal Pradesh, a remote northeastern Indian state bordering China. A team of herpetologists from the Wildlife Institute of India were conducting a survey of reptiles in the region. The snake's about 3 feet long and has a unique green coloration and distinctive white stripe. The researchers believe the snake is highly venomous, based on its close resemblance to other members of the Trimeresurus genus. But more research is needed to determine the exact composition of its venom and its potential toxicity. This new snake species underscores the importance of continued efforts to survey and document biodiversity in India's remote regions. The country is home to a diverse range of snake species, many of which have not been formally identified or studied yet. As humans continue to encroach upon wild habitats, it's increasingly important to identify and protect vulnerable species. The researchers hope this discovery will encourage further exploration and conservation efforts in this biodiverse region. 2. Ancient artwork. In October 2022, archaeologists discovered Assyrian reliefs at a site in northern Iraq that was destroyed by ISIS. Reliefs are 3D elements typically carved into stone slabs. The ones found were part of a palatial gate at Nineveh, the capital of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. They show the military campaigns of King Sennacherib, one of the empire's most famous leaders. The reliefs are revolutionary works of art because they have a distinct level of realism and detail in depicting landscapes, animals, and emotions. They're also valuable sources of historical information. The reliefs were part of a wider decorative scheme that included wall paintings and glazed bricks. They were first used extensively by King Ashurnasirpal II at Karlu, Nimrud, and later by his successors at Khorsabad and Nineveh. Some of the reliefs show a procession of Assyrian gods, like Assur and Mulisu, standing on lions, dragons, and other powerful creatures. Others show scenes of battles, sieges, hunting, tribute-bearing, and royal ceremonies. The discovery is remarkable since it's the first major find of Assyrian art in Iraq since the 1800s. It was made in an area that was heavily damaged by ISIS during their 2014 to 2017 occupation. Archaeologists hope to restore and preserve the reliefs for future generations. 1. Women in power. The Bronze Age was a period of human history that lasted from 3000 BC to 1200 BC. During this time, people learned how to make tools and weapons from bronze. The time period also saw the rise of complex civilizations and societies around the world. One of these regions was southeastern Spain, where archaeologists have recently found evidence that women may have held the majority of political power in a society called Allagash. Allagash was one of the first state-like civilizations in Europe, with hierarchical social structure and urban settlements. It existed from 2200 BC to 1550 BC. In 2014, archaeologists excavated a tomb at an ancient site called La Almoloya, which was part of Allagash. The tomb contained the remains of two individuals, a man and a woman. They were buried with expensive goods, including silver ornaments, ceramic vessels, weapons, and tools. The woman wore a silver headpiece, which was a symbol of authority and prestige. The archaeologists analyzed the tomb and its contents using radiocarbon dating, isotopic analysis, and spatial analysis. They concluded the woman was probably an elite member of Allagash who had political power. She may have been a ruler or a leader who governed La Almoloya with her male partner. The discovery challenges the assumption that power in ancient societies was almost exclusively a product of male dominance. The hint of women's power during the Bronze Age reveals a new dimension of human history that deserves more recognition. 8. A treasure trove of classic cars found in a French barn. Imagine finding a collection of 60 rare and vintage cars that have been hidden inside a barn for decades. That's what happened to two experts from Art Curial Motors, a French auction house, back in 2014. They were invited by the heirs of Roger Bayon, a former transportation big shot who amassed a remarkable fleet of automobiles from the 1930s to the 1970s. The cars were kept in storage in various buildings on a farm in western France. They were caked in dust and rust, but they were also priceless gems of automotive history. Among them were classic models by Maserati, Bugatti, Ferrari, Hispano-Suiza, Talbot Lago, Panhard Levasseur, Delahaye, and Allagash. One of the most stunning finds was a Ferrari 250 GT California SWB, one of only 37 in existence. It belonged to French actor Alain Delon, who drove it with Jane Fonda and Shirley MacLaine. The car's worth between $12 and $15 million. The vehicles were auctioned off by Art Curial Motor Cars on February 6, 2015 in Paris. The sale attracted buyers from all over the world and fetched a total bid of $28.5 million. The Ferrari alone sold for $18.5 million, setting a new world record. The barn find was dubbed the discovery of the century by Art Curial Motor Cars. It served as a rare opportunity to witness some of the most iconic cars ever made come out of their long slumber. 7. The lost fleet of Alfa Romeos. In 2012, a group of explorers found something remarkable inside an abandoned Belgian castle. They discovered 6 Alfa Romeo sports cars from the 1960s hidden under the floor of a large hall. The castle, known as Kasteel van Heers, Castle of Heers, dates back to the 13th century and once belonged to a noble family. It's been empty and decaying since the 1980s when its last owner died. The explorers entered the castle through a hole in the fence and made their way to a hall filled with stained glass windows. It was there that they noticed a wooden trapdoor leading to an underground garage. They opened it and were stunned by what they saw. 6 Alfa Romeos covered in dust and cobwebs, some still with keys in their ignition. They were models like the Giulia Sprint GT Veloce, Giulia Sprint Speciale, and Giulietta Spider Veloce. The cars were in states of disrepair, but still had original parts and features. They would be worth hundreds of thousands of euros if restored. The explorers took photos and videos of their find and posted them on the internet, attracting worldwide attention. It was said Michel Desmaziers, one of the castle's owners, built one of the prototypes of the Alfa Romeo himself, and there are documents to prove that he entered a race with the car in 1964. Up until 2007, when the castle was taken over, Michel and his wife lived inside a tiny portion of the abandoned building. They allegedly had a buyer lined up for the castle, but after years of unfulfilled promises, the government seized the property and everything inside of it. The Alfas were ultimately auctioned off in 2015 and sold for €117,000. 6. The ghost trains of the Allagash. In the remote northern woods of Maine, there's a hidden treasure few people have had the luxury of seeing. 2 rusty steam locomotives that once hauled logs across the vast wilderness. These ghost trains are a relic of a bygone era, when logging was a growing industry and railroads were the only way to transport material. The trains were owned by the Eagle Lake and West Branch Railroad, which operated from 1927 to 1933. The railroad was created by Edward Lacroix, a Canadian entrepreneur who secured a contract to harvest spruce trees from the Allagash region. Lacroix used a genius system of dams, canals and sluices to float logs from Eagle Lake down to Chamberlain Lake, where they were then loaded onto flat cars and pulled by trains along a 13-mile track. The railroad was short-lived though. The Great Depression hit the logging industry hard, and Lacroix's contract ended in 1933. He decided to abandon his equipment in the woods instead of paying for their removal. The trains were left in a shed near Eagle Lake where they slowly decayed with time. Today, the trains are part of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway, a state park that preserves the area's natural beauty and history. The locomotives are only accessible by canoe or snowmobile depending on the season. Visitors can marvel at their size and design and imagine what life must have been like for the loggers who worked on them. The ghost trains of the Allagash offer a glimpse into Maine's past. They're also reminders of how nature can reclaim what humans once left behind. 5. Norman Timms Special. Norman Timms was an American mechanical engineer and car designer in the 20th century. He worked with Preston Tucker on his innovative Tucker automobiles. He also built Indy cars for sponsors, such as the Blue Crown Spark Plug Specials that won the Indianapolis 500 3 times in a row. He was well known for his expertise in aerodynamics and ground effects, which improved the performance of many race cars. One of his most remarkable creations was the Norman Timms Special, a custom vehicle from 1948. It was a sleek and elegant streamliner with a mid-mounted 1948 Buick straight-8 engine. The car had no doors, windows, or trunk, and it had a single-piece aluminium body that could be lifted in order to access the engine and cockpit. It cost about $10,000 to build and was inspired by the auto union races of the 1930s. The Norman Timms Special was featured in both magazines and exhibitions, such as Motor Trend and the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. But it was eventually abandoned in a California desert for unknown reasons. It was rediscovered by a collector named Gary Cervelli in 2002, who restored it to its former glory. The car is now considered one of the most beautiful and iconic custom vehicles ever made. Norman Timms died in 1987 at the ripe old age of 83. He left behind a legacy of innovation and craftsmanship that still inspires many car enthusiasts to this day. 4. 36 Corvettes. In 1989, VH1, a music channel, decided to organize a contest and offer an incredible prize: 36 Corvettes, one from each year of production since 1953. The channel bought the cars for about $610,000 and spent another $250,000 advertising. The contest attracted over 4 million entries at $2 each. The prize ultimately went to Dennis Amadeo, a Long Island carpenter. He sent in about a dozen entries after hearing about the contest on the radio, but he didn't get to keep his prize for long. He was contacted by Peter Max, a German-born pop artist who had a vision of using the Corvettes as canvases for colorful paintings. Max offered Amadeo $250,000 in cash, plus $250,000 worth of his artwork in exchange for the vehicles. Amadeo agreed to sell the collection to Max, who planned to transform them into an art project he called 36 Corvettes plus one. But Max never finished his creative vision. He stored the cars in New York City for decades, where they gathered dust and decayed. Some of them were vandalized or damaged. In 2014, Max sold his collection to some investors. The cars were restored, then displayed at various venues and events before being given away in another 2020 sweepstakes. The new contest aimed to raise money for military veterans through donations. The story of the 36 Corvettes is a fascinating one that involves music, art, history, and luck. It shows how one man's dream can quickly turn into another man's nightmare. Would you enter into a sweepstakes like this? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you like what you've seen so far. 3. Robot Parking Lot. The Auto Safe Sky Park was a futuristic car park in Edinburgh that used robots to stack cars on top of each other in a multi-story building. It opened in 2001, and these robots would take over the vehicles from drivers who entered bays and move them to the nearest open spot using elevators and turntables. But the project soon faced technical issues and financial losses. One day, they simply closed the doors, and they remained that way for several years. The car park was shut down without warning, leaving some customers unable to get their vehicles back. For over a decade, the building remained empty until it was finally demolished in 2018. During the demolition, workers found several abandoned cars that had been left behind by their owners. Some of them were covered in dust and cobwebs, while others had flat tires and rusted parts. The cars included luxury models like a Fiat Uno, a Mercedes E320, a Peugeot 406, and even an Austin Maestro. The mystery of why they were abandoned has been partly solved by some former customers and employees of the car park. According to them, the owners had either moved away or died without leaving any contact details, while others simply forgot about their cars or decided they weren't worth retrieving. The car park also had poor records and communication systems, making it difficult to track down the owners. The abandoned vehicles have become a curiosity for many people who've seen photos of them online or visited the site before it was fully demolished. They've also raised questions about the viability and reliability of automated parking systems, especially when they fail unexpectedly. The AutoSafe Sky Park was an ambitious project that aimed to revolutionize urban parking, but it ended up a forgotten relic. 2. The Highway of Death. The Highway of Death runs from Kuwait to Basra, Iraq. On this route in 1991, during the Gulf War, coalition forces destroyed some civilian vehicles and fleeing Iraqi army formations. War's catastrophic consequences can be seen on this infamous road. One of the last seen Persian Gulf War battles was dubbed the Highway of Death by Western media. The US Air Force, along with its allies, launched huge airstrikes on 2 routes connecting Kuwait and the Iraqi border in 1991. The Iraqi army evacuated Kuwait as a consequence, and thousands of vehicles, like cars and armored equipment, were abandoned and destroyed. Across Kuwaiti and Iraqi territories lie these 2 death highways. Al-Jara, the border town of Safwan, Iraq, and Basra were all connected by the 6-lane Highway 80. Al-Jara to Qasra was accessible by a different seaside road. Iraq utilized the road to transport soldiers into the emirate during the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. On February 24, 1991, international coalition troops launched a ground operation to free the site. The coalition's airstrikes had effectively cut off Iraqi forces on the front lines. While some troops made an effort to fight back, the majority withdrew. The situation for the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait was getting worse. President Saddam Hussein announced the departure of all Iraqi soldiers on January 26th. After Iraq withdrew from Kuwait, White House Secretary Marlin Fitzwater said the United States and its allies would refrain from attacking the army. As Arab and US Marines arrived in Kuwait on the same day, the US 7th Corps dashed all the way from the west of Kuwait in the Iraqi desert to Basra in the east, surrounding all Iraqi forces in Kuwait. The Iraqi defenses collapsed, and some soldiers tried to escape by taking any car they could. This caused a traffic jam on the Highway of Death, which had many kinds of vehicles on it, such as tanks, guns, fire engines, police cars, vans, limos, and private cars. 1. Asmara's Tank Graveyard, a legacy of war and liberation in Eritrea. The tank graveyard in Asmara, Eritrea, is a field full of thousands of military vehicles that were used in a 30-year war with Ethiopia. The war began in 1961 when Eritrea fought for its independence, and ended in 1991 when the country became a de facto state. The war was one of Africa's longest and bloodiest struggles, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives and displacing millions. The tank graveyard is found on the outskirts of Asmara, the capital city of Eritrea. It covers about 37 acres and contains tanks, trucks, cars, buses, helicopters, planes, and more from both sides of the war. Some of the vehicles are stacked on top of one another. Others are scattered around or buried under sand and dirt. The vehicles are mostly Soviet or Chinese-made models that were supplied to Ethiopia by its allies in the Cold War. The tank graveyard's not an official tourist attraction, but it does attract visitors. Some of them see it as a symbol of resilience and courage, while others see it as a testament to the futility of war. The tank graveyard also serves as a source of scrap metal for locals who salvage parts. Thanks for watching. Which of these vehicles did you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.